Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Hello. Welcome to the first ever episode of the Project Endure podcast. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I am so happy to have you here. If you're listening to my voice right now, it either means that you know me personally or you happen to stumble across this podcast by random chance out there on the internet, and in either case, I hope that you'll stick around. This podcast is something special. I can't tell you exactly where it's going, but I can tell you exactly why it started. And before we get to that, I think the best place to begin would be with my story, because my story explains a lot about how we got here to this moment right now. And to make a long story short, because I've told this in many places, in many forms, I had a very normal childhood right up until I was 10 years old. And one morning I woke up and couldn't see out of my right eye. It came out of nowhere and eventually led to a diagnosis of Best's disease. Best's disease is also known as juvenile onset macular dystrophy, and for those of you who have no idea what that means, Best's disease is a condition that causes progressive loss of central eyesight, and there is currently no cure. And so through my childhood, I struggled quite a bit with the uncertainty that came along with my condition. I constantly worried about the future and whether or not I would be able to do certain things or live life in a certain way because of my eyes. I think throughout a lot of my childhood, I felt different. I felt as if I were at a disadvantage, and I felt sorry for myself. And to make a long story short, Best's disease for a long time was a really heavy burden for me. And that all changed, but before it changed, I struggled quite a bit. And life has a funny way of handing us some of the biggest burdens in the most inconvenient moments. And for me, that came right before starting graduate school. And to give a little bit more context, I would say my years in undergraduate studies were pretty stable in terms of eyesight. I hadn't had many changes, and because of that, I was caught off guard when I lost a big chunk of my sight just a few weeks before I was going to move to Philadelphia and pursue my doctorate degree in physical therapy. And so my world was turned upside down, and the weeks leading up to school were some of the hardest and darkest weeks of my life. I was consumed with doubt and fear, and I worried about what would happen if I lost more sight and I couldn't finish what I started. With the guidance of my parents, I decided to go to school and to embrace the even if mindset. Instead of worrying about what could happen, I decided to trust that even if something were to happen, that I would figure things out. Even if I lost more sight, I would figure out a way to not only get by, but to excel. And so with that mindset at heart, I went to school. And it turned out that the first year of graduate school was the hardest and darkest year of my life, without a doubt. On the outside, it might have seemed like I had it all together, but on the inside, I felt more alone, more hopeless, and more helpless than ever before. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't pick myself up. I would walk around the streets of Philadelphia in my free time with my head down, my hands in my pockets, and holding back tears because I just didn't know what else to do. And the next part of my story is the most important part of my story. I understand that this isn't going to be for everyone, and so I would like to preface what comes next with the fact that I am not pushing anything on anyone. I am simply sharing my experience and a core part of my story. So I grew up going to church, and I always believed in God. I knew that life was so much bigger than just me. But during the first year of school, I stopped chasing the God that I knew. I couldn't believe that there would be a God who could let someone feel the way that I was feeling. And so instead of chasing God, I started chasing a girl. I had a huge crush on her from the moment I first laid eyes on her. And as I spent more time with this girl, I began to feel better and better. I began to feel more like myself. And I did everything that I could possibly do to spend time with this girl. And so when she invited me to church, it was an easy decision. I went because I wanted to be with her. However, when we got to church and I stood next to her, the music played, and I can't quite find the words still to this day what I felt. But I felt an overwhelming sense of love and calmness that just washed over me. It was as if God had his hand on my shoulder and told me that even though I had stopped chasing him, he had never stopped chasing me. It was the moment that I knew that I was in the right place with the right person, and I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I realized that everything in my life, including my loss of sight, had been leading me down the path to bring me here. I trusted then, and I will always trust, that everything happens for a reason. What was once a burden has become an incredible blessing. And I feel that I was put here on this earth to be of service to those around me, and my story is a big part of that. If you know me, you know that I love quotes, and this one is my all-time favorite. Christine Kane once said, "Sometimes, when you're in a dark place and you think you've been buried, you've actually been planted." I look back at all of the dark seasons in my life, all of the heaviness and all of the burdens, and I can now see that even though it felt like I was buried, I wasn't. I was planted, and I just didn't know it yet. More than anything else, through my struggle with Best's disease, I've learned that life is about perspective. While we might not all be going blind, we all have our own struggles, and that is part of being human. Life isn't easy, and it's not supposed to be. But it's not about what happens to us. It's all about how we respond. It's not about what we look at that matters. It's about what we see. It's not about the adversity that we face. It's about how we face the adversity. It's about making the best of our circumstances and controlling what we can control. To me, sight is what we see with our eyes open, and vision is what we see with our eyes closed. As I've lost sight, I've gained vision. I've been able to step out of myself and see that life is so much bigger than just me. I've been able to dream, to imagine, and to find the best in myself through less than ideal circumstances. My struggle has afforded me opportunities to find strength, and my life has been a practice of finding the right perspective. I can't change what's happening with my eyesight, and it might seem like an uphill battle from the outside. But I like it that way. It's only through struggle that we find true strength. And every day for me is a great day because I don't know what tomorrow will bring. I do my best to let my condition keep me in the moment. It's not always easy, but it's what I strive for. In addition, my condition has afforded me opportunities to endure dark seasons, to endure difficult circumstances, and to endure life. It's been said that life is a marathon, not a sprint. And while some might argue that life is actually a series of smaller sprints, I think the point is similar here. Life can be long, and we can get tired. However, like James Watkins once said, a river cuts through rock not because of its power, but because of its persistence. In life, endurance, persistence, and perspective are three of the most important things that we can have as human beings. That's just my opinion. And those things are so important because just as water can cut through rock with enough time and persistence in the same direction, we too can carve a path through life if we have endurance with direction, driven by purpose-fueled persistence. And so to bring things back full circle to Project Endure, I don't know what things look like down the road, but I do know what the mission is. And it is to encourage, inspire, and guide lasting, positive change in perspective and enduring pursuit of our full potential. I'm setting the wheels in motion for something that I hope and believe will change lives. Now, this podcast is a first small step toward whatever comes next. The goal here is to provide value to the people who listen, to have authentic conversations with people who have developed incredible perspective through challenge, through hardship, and have found strength in their struggle. To have conversations about things that matter and about things that we don't talk about as much as we should. I think more than anything, I want this podcast to be a place where people can come and be inspired, but also encouraged. Encouraged that they're not alone in what they're going through and that other people have been through similar things and come out the other side as a better version of themselves. I want this podcast to be a place where people can put in their headphones and know that they are going to walk away from whatever conversation is had just a little bit better and just a little bit more inspired to be persistent, to change perspective, to have endurance, and above all else, to pursue their full potential with whatever circumstances they have in front of them. I think I want people to feel empowered to go after what it is they want, while also lifting others up along the way. And I hope that I can do those things for you and for anybody who listens. And so I didn't come into this episode with any plans or with an agenda, but I just wanted to share a little bit about why I'm doing this. And why this podcast exists. I'm going to wind things down, but before I do, I just want to take a minute to thank you. To thank you for your time, for your attention, for your support, and your encouragement. I have been through a lot in life so far, but I wouldn't be the person I am, or I wouldn't be where I am without the people around me. I don't think that we can do anything alone well in life. And endurance requires community. It requires support. And whether or not you know me, I want to be able to support you, and I mean that. So if you're listening to this podcast and there's something that I could potentially do to help you on your journey, in your process, please don't hesitate to reach out. I would absolutely love to hear from you and see how I can help. And with that being said, I'm going to shut things down. I'm going to get out from underneath this blanket and go grab something to eat. I hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I hope that you'll tune in next time. If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. Oh, and one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.